Advisors live stream. I am Megan Seaton. I lead the business development team here at Avero, and I am joined by our very well established and esteemed CEO, Mr. Abhijit Varakar. We call him AV. Hello, AV. Good morning.
Hi, Megan. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So today we are talking about a very, very important, I think the most important piece when you're talking about ERP implementation. So we're talking about boosting the morale and streamlining your workflows before you even go to market to look for an ERP. So to kick us off, I just want to get your initial thoughts on this topic.
Yeah. So before we kick off, I want to remind people that, chat box is open. If you have questions, please throw them in there. Tell us where you're calling from or listening from or watching from. And then the other thing is that this live stream happens every Wednesday morning, Eastern time at 10 o'clock. And then you should follow us on our website and social presences because this will turn into a podcast and blogs and all kinds of wonderful content that you can follow.
Yes,
Um,
and make sure you sign up for our newsletter as
yes,
well. They're
yes,
really fun to
those
read.
are fun. Yeah,
Yes,
fun content with lots of education.
that's
Um,
right.
so to answer your question, what should we do before we look for an ERP? I think the first thing to do is get a sense of where you are today.
Hmm.
What are you doing today? What are your systems? What are your processes? And where do you stand? What is your as is situation? That's the baseline. You need to look at your infrastructure. What kind of networking gear do you have? How is your ISP connection? Do you have a fail-safe, failover connection? What's going on with the current state of your software and operations? So once you have that, you have a good baseline to see where you are. It's like, again, this is like building a house or a
Hmm.
school building or a police station, right? You're building a new city hall. A lot of planning and a lot of selling to the executives, to your council, to your board needs to happen before you even think about going out to market.
Yeah, and Avi, what's interesting to me is how many times we go into an organization, whatever it may be, and we're talking to, the C-suite level or the HR
Mhm.
director, and we say, okay, what is your process for X? And they can't tell us,
Yeah.
that they don't know what their day-to-day process is
Mhm.
for us to even start with the baseline, right? So do you have any advice along those lines, right?
Yeah, and it's not uncommon, right? A
Hmm.
C-suite, a CFO, a mayor, a city manager doesn't necessarily need to have an in-depth understanding of processes. They're after outcomes, right?
Right.
So somebody in their department knows the details. Someone in their department knows how they get the outcomes. So yes, you need to have a general understanding of where the gaps are in your operations, but not necessarily to the very detail. That's where we come in, right? You bring
Hmm.
in a consulting team to help you understand what your processes are, where the gaps are today, and help you craft a vision for where you need to go in the future as an organization, as a department, and what tools are you going to use to get more automation, more transparency.
So, how does focusing on efficiency rather than automation affect the long term success of an ERP implementation?
So I don't think those two things mean the same thing, right? If
Right.
you can have automation without efficiency, you can have automation that is meaningless. But really looking at business processes at a deep level is critical. You need to look at your business processes across the board without thinking about what systems you have, what systems do you want in the future, without looking at, vendor software brochures. Just think about how you do business today
Hmm.
and does it make sense? Because the last time you probably looked at your standard operating procedure was 20 years ago when you implemented a new system or you were a new chief in this position. So, really taking a good look at where you are today, documenting it. And there's several ways of doing it. You can use Visio, you can use pen and paper, you can use whiteboards, you can use IBM Blueworks Live that we do, which is a fantastic automated tool. Um, but really get a sense of where you are, right? And because you've been there for a while, or maybe you're new, but you have staff that has been there for a while, there's tribal knowledge that you need to tap into. Why are the processes the way they are today? Why are the systems the way they are today? And there's very good reasons for why decisions were made 20, 30 years ago, but that don't apply anymore, right? So you need to look at all of this from a holistic perspective. The other thing you need to do is really look at the vision. What do you want your organization to be doing in the next 10 years or 5 years? How do you want to deliver services to your staff? How do you want to deliver services to the end user? May it be, the citizens of a city, a utility consumer, public housing authority recipients. How do you want to deliver services, and then work backwards to the current state and see where the gaps are. Easier said than done, right? You're too close sometimes to your organization, meaning you're in the weeds. You've taken certain things for granted. Things have been done a certain way in a while, for a long time. So you need a third party perspective, and it doesn't have to be us. It can be anyone else that looks at your organization and objectives and operations in a very objective manner and tells you what's going on. Very critical first steps to take.
Yes, and we can help you with that vision. And what I mean by that is we can help you define the questions to ask, the questions that you should be asking to your teams to be able to do that backwards work. I know we're really good at saying you should do this, you should do that. But how does a head of a department head bring their team to the table to be able to discuss these types of things? How do you get everyone on board to even start talking about some of the things that need to change?
Well, I think the most important thing is, uh, sorry, my microphone's echoing. I think the most important thing to recognize is your who's your team, right? If you're a new city manager or a CFO or a CIO, look around you. Who is involved? Are they forward thinking? Do they need change? Do they want change? Um, and start from there. If you have an established team, it's almost a sales job, right? If you're a CEO, you have to sell the fact that we need to change, we need new tools, we need better processes, and it's a critical part of any leader's job responsibilities to convince people, to show them the way to the future, to a better way of doing things. And sometimes you just have to tell them this is how it's going to go, and we're moving forward. That's again also the job of a chief executive, to make decisions and push things forward. You can be stuck in analysis paralysis forever, but sometimes it just takes one voice to say, "We're moving forward. We're moving forward with this direction, and this is what we're going to do for the next 2 years." So it's not one answer that fits all. It really depends on what your organization is, what you're going through, what other external factors are affecting your operations. And again, looking at it strategically and holistically is very critical.
Yes, absolutely. We say all the time that these are people projects. They are not IT projects. And the people part is the most important when you're implementing any type of technology. So what are some of the risks of automating, flawed processes?
Some of the risks, I don't think inherently there are any risks, but like I said, automation in itself should not be pursued. It should be pursued with the vision of driving efficiency, the vision of driving more through less resources, cheaper, better, faster, more transparent. Um, and in the government space, you need to define what that means to you. What does efficiency mean to you in a specific department or across the board for your organization? It can have different meanings and contexts for different people, different organizations. So define what that means, right? And then within efficiency, it doesn't always have to be automation. Of course, that's one of the biggest things we talk about, but it could also mean changing your codes, your policies, your local ordinances in some cases that are holding things up, that are bottlenecking the process. You need to look at all of these things holistically, and then you can find the gaps within where you want to go. So the inherent risk, to go back to your question, of automation is you can just seek and pursue pure automation without thinking about how it really fits into your definition of efficiency, and what is it going to cost you to make processes automated. Are you going to lose jobs? You need to think about the human element of the business process that you're automating. Because think of it, if you're a city government or a county, interacting with your citizens is a big part of why you exist. So automated robots is fine, automated chatbots is fine for the very basic services, but do you really want chatbots dealing with things like property appraisals and property taxes, someone that's upset about what notice they received? You need the human element to handle those things. I'm gonna take audience questions.
Sure.
We've got visitors from India and Knoxville.
Hey guys.
Mackenzie asks, how have the functionality and usability of ERP systems in county governments advanced over the last 5 years? Great question. I think a lot has advanced and a lot hasn't changed at the same time, right? Governments and counties are supposed to be conservative and slow moving by design. But at the same time, there are certain aspects of the business of government that need to be automated, made more efficient, made more accessible to the stakeholders. So functionality in ERP systems has changed from the standpoint of a lot more uh, hosted solutions, a lot more SaaS solutions, a lot more solutions that don't cost as much as they did 10, 15 years ago. You can buy and subscribe to fractions of services or modules and turn on services that you need and turn off things that you don't need. So there's more power to the consumer if done right. Like if you fall for bad sales pitches that say we need to build you a custom solution and we need to build you something that's tailored to you, then you're acquiring more technical debt and you're going to be in trouble in the next 5 years, because then you have to keep up with the customizations, you have to keep up with infrastructure and the once in a blue moon kind of product that you have created for yourself. So lots of horror stories of how that's gone sideways. So functionality and usability, functionalities maybe have not changed as much. It's become more usable, more user friendly, and then again with the advent of AI, it's going to get even better. I think the biggest thing that has changed is the adoption of software as a service contracts and hosted services. We just did a video on how do you tailor those contracts in the new SaaS era, because it's some for prospects in the government sectors, uh, their purchasing and legal departments are still stuck in the we're buying or building software phase, right? So you need to move away from that. This is a new world, and you need to learn about how do you negotiate and create uh, SaaS contracts, basically. So those things have changed. Usability and accessibility of software solutions. Um, what other questions did you have, Megan?
Yeah. So, I did want to mention, you and Eric talked about this yesterday a little bit, but what would you say to those clients or to the viewers who say, well, my software vendor has conducted a business process review, so we don't need that from you? What would you
Mhm.
say to the client?
It's not a bad thing to do, right? It's a good step in the right direction, but it's biased,
Mhm.
because the software provider will more often than not guide you along the path of here's what our product can do. Forget about your efficiencies, forget about your vision, forget about how you want to do business. This is how our product does business. And so you're taking a what I'm assuming to be a broken process already, because you have this solution that you've had for a long time. You have Excel sheets and paper documents flying around to augment this system that you're working for. It's not working for you. And now you're going to bring in the same vendor to tell you how to do a business process analysis. There's value in having them do a gap fit, right? There's a difference. How are you using our product? What is it capable of doing, and can it do what you need it to do? There's a different thing from business process analysis and redesign. And if it's being sold to you as a business process redesign, I'm sorry, but that's what we call around here is a pig in a poke, right? It's not real. You're being led down a path that has been predetermined for you. But as an executive of a county or a city government or a school system, you need to think about, again, independent of what the software provider is telling you or what they're capable of doing, you need to think for yourselves. and think of what you need. This is like building a house. You don't, yes, you're going to talk to the contractor about what's possible and what can they do for you. If the contractor is not capable of giving you your dream kitchen, but they're trying to sell you on something that's inferior because that's all they can do. That's how this is going to be. You need to talk to an architect about what kind of features you need, what kind of kitchen do you really want, how many bedrooms, what windows do you need, what direction do you want it facing, and then you pick a contractor that's going to do that for you. So process redesign that's led by a software vendor, not a bad thing to do, but these are the caveats, and large grain of salt as you go through that process. It's not useless, it's useful, but again, it's not all the way.
And oftentimes, software vendors, they understand the software, right? They don't
Mhm.
understand the intricacies of local government, city
Yeah,
government, what goes on in HR, what goes on in
yeah.
finance, what reporting they need, and the intricacies of
Mhm.
that, right?
Or a
Um,
particular, I'm sorry, but a particular client, right? They're like
yeah.
housing authorities, for example. They're unique. Like the industry in itself is unique, and each one tends to be unique because of how
Yep.
they function, what kind of services they offer, how they're funded at the local level, and things like that. So, what works in another county may not necessarily work in a different one. So that's also a fallacy, right? They uh, Clients are often told that only our product can do the reporting that your state is asking you to do.
Yep.
I mean, that's that's not right. If you define your requirements for the reporting that your state is asking you to do, or Department of Education, or whoever else, uh, any product should be able to report. Now, there's unique situations where states sanction specific software vendors or products to directly interface with their state level systems. Now, if
Yes.
that's the case, it may be different, but more often than not, it's not. It's it you know it borders on lies when clients are told that no, only we can do this for you, and don't look elsewhere because we're the only ones in the state that can do this. What the state's asking for. Um, so call them out on that, or call us, and we'll help you
Ask
sift through
us.
that more.
Yes. We typically we will know.
Yeah.
So, how do cross functional teams contribute to a more holistic approach to business process redesign?
It's a good question because when we do business process redesign, we're doing the way it works. It is we're doing sessions, gather
Mhm.
people of a certain functional area in a conference room or Zoom, God forbid, and do just talk about the process and map it out on the screen as we're going through this. Now, there are times when you have, for example, the planning department and permits department, two different organizations, two different departments, but very similar function. To find out what they're doing that is overlapping is very critical because as you redesign processes, you need to think about how do we find those redundancies and how do we squeeze them so that we can find efficiency, right? So cross departmental interactions is important when it comes to like processes. The other good example is between HR and payroll. How do these things interface? Sometimes payroll is run by finance department while the HR functions are handled separately. At other times, HR and payroll are in the same department. So, what are the commonalities? What are the redundancies? Are we duplicating stuff? Are we using two different systems to do the same things? That's really critical as you go through these processes. So, when we do business process mapping, all of this is shown on an actual map, and it's very powerful because you can tell stories all day, but if most people are visual, you want to see what's going on, and they're color coded, and you have handoffs, and you see exactly where you're doubling your efforts, spending more money, more time, and therefore being inefficient. We've got more audience questions.
Do I would like to read a well. Oh, you took mine. That's the one. I think this is a very good question.
All right, Clay says, what if a process owner has a clear vision for improving a process by implementing new tech, but current processes are getting in the way? Is it wise to implement something that would force a change in the policy as a result? or is there a better approach to that in your experience? What a great question.
Hmm.
There's nuance to it, right? You don't want to force policy change because you're implementing a new system. You want to suggest or influence policy change because it makes sense for the organization. The last time this policy was looked at was decades ago, and it's been grandfathered in. So again, a holistic approach needs to be applied here, and process improvement by implementing new technology. It's a chicken and egg. What comes first? Is it new technologies that's driving the process change, or do you want process change to drive the adoption of new technology? So looking at it from those standpoints is very important. There is no single formula to this. um, and as we say in our industry, it depends on who the client is, what they're going through, what their situation is, what the timelines are. um, and you never want to force change. That's the last thing you want to do, because it doesn't stick, right? People are gonna go back to, uh, you know after go live, the spreadsheets are gonna come out and they're gonna look a different way, but you're gonna go back doing business the same way that you were doing before you went through this whole process of ERP implementation. Let's see, who else do we have? Lexi says, or asks, do you see counties in different geographic areas of the US enacting ERP modernization techniques at different paces? And if so, why do you think that is? Not really. I think you see waves. Some states might mandate modernization. Some states might have some funding sources that they offer to counties. Um, we've seen an uptick in modernization because of all of the COVID era funding that's available to local governments. So no, different paces, not necessarily. Uh, it's hard
Think
to
different.
tell what's going to take.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are many who are very resistant to change. They don't want to change. They're completely against it, right?
Mhm.
And so it takes the right leadership to implement that change or to suggest it or to suggest new ideas. So I do think there are those counties who need, a refresher, a new, maybe new leadership, someone that can supply a unique vision and a way to do things better for their citizens.
Yeah. So interesting comment by Mackenzie. Interested in exploring variations in Tennessee. So if you look at city governments in Tennessee that are part of the TCMA and small to medium sized cities, they're mostly being served by one vendor, local government, and they're one of those vendors that say that they're the only ones that can do the reporting for TVA or to the state comptroller's office at the city and the state level. So I'm sorry, the city and the county level. And we found that to be, you know, that's a blurry line. It's not necessarily true. Um, they've also not really kept up with modernization on their own systems. So the clients that are with that product are in under the impression that that's the only choice they have. So there's a lot of education that has to go with modernization. There's a lot of great systems available nationally that can do what you need it to do at the local level, at the state level, at the fed level. Again, defining requirements and business processes is critical, because then you can dictate that or instruct that to your whatever system you have. And there are no restrictions on who can do what.
And this goes back to their day to day. This is a system that they've used since they probably started working in the organization, right? And so they've gained trust with the system. They know how to use it, and whoever they're working with within the provider, right? Whoever their contact is there, they probably have trust with that vendor, right? And so they trust
Mhm.
everything they say. Why would I question anything? It's worked this way for 20 years. What questions do I need to ask? Why would I need to question anything? And so
Mhm.
I think that's part of why we go live, right? It is education. It is knowing what question to ask. It is knowing who to call, knowing the experts, right?
Yeah,
And I think there's a lot of work that we can do right here locally. So I hope
absolutely.
members are engaged right now. So we'd love to help you out. Anything else from the chat?
Let's see. I think we covered the latest question. Oh, there's one more. How have the functionality and we covered that.
You did that one. You
Sorry, I
did
clicked
that
on the wrong thing.
one. If there
Uh,
isn't anything else, oh,
there's hang on.
data
What
analytics.
advanced
Okay.
data analytics features do modern ERP systems provide to improve decision making in county governments? Good question. So most systems come with what's called canned reports, right? And then within your contract, you might negotiate some specific custom reports that are relevant to your organization or function. And then and then it's wide open. You can connect your data sources and your databases to things like Power BI, to Tableau, what have you, to create custom reports and dashboards for you. Um, what's exciting about this time is the advent of AI and natural language reporting. You've had these capabilities within BI, Power BI for a while, where you can go ask a question in natural language. That's all it means. You don't have to ask someone to write your report. If your databases are connected right, and that's where your IT organization might come into the picture, is just get them to connect your database, whatever system you're using, to Power BI. If you're a Microsoft shop, you get Power BI for free. If you use O365, it's included in your Office licensing. Get them to connect databases, and then you can talk to your data, ask it questions without having to create a report, which is the traditional way of doing it. So, data analytics features are aplenty, and data is prevalent. If you have an ERP system, you own a lot of data. How you use it is really the key. And again, this is a great time to be in your position, because there's a lot of tools available for you to do reporting by yourself in a timely fashion and make database decisions.
If there's not anything else from the chat, I would like to spend some time on this topic of executive alignment.
Mhm.
We could probably do a whole nother live series on executive alignment. So, what does that mean to you? And just explain in your own words to our viewers what that is, executive alignment, and why it's important.
So when you take on a large digital modernization project that may or may not be ERP, but it is organization wide, you need everybody pulling in the same direction. You need everyone on the boat rowing in the same direction. If you have one person rowing in the opposite direction, you're not going to get far. So, executive alignment is making sure that everyone's clear on the vision for why we're doing this, what the outcomes are going to be, involved, who's responsible for what piece, and again, agrees on the why and the where we're headed. Number one. And then you need a leader that's making decisions, because you can't make decisions in a committee. You need somebody to make the critical decisions, break ties, break up fights. It's all going to happen. And someone that can time it, right? Think of this as competitive rowing. You have to time your strokes to get the most out of this. So, project management, decision making, all of that at the executive level is very important, because if the executives are not aligned and they're not communicating downstream, then the project tends to not go so well. This is another example of why it's really important to have major transformation projects coming out of the C suite, meaning the county manager's office, the mayor's office, the city manager's office, and not necessarily from IT, right? They're involved from an infrastructure, connectivity perspective, cybersecurity perspective, huge critical role. But these are organization wide projects that really need executive alignment, with everyone rowing in the same direction, everyone's using the same words, everyone communicating the same things, and showing the same kind of urgency and excitement from the very top, that should then trickle down to the rest of the organization. That to me is executive alignment, and it's not easy to get right. And we do a lot of work with executive teams, getting them aligned, because not everyone needs to agree with the direction, but they need to commit to it, right? There
Right.
are good reasons for people that don't agree with why we're picking a certain product, why we're doing this in a certain way, why we're doing it now. But that's when the leadership and the decision maker comes into the picture, and they say, no, I see your point. I agree with what you're saying, but this is the decision. So disagree and commit is very important. And when we work with executive teams, or department heads at the county or or city levels, it's a very critical thing to do at the very outset of the project, even before you kick the project off. Make sure everybody is on the same page, even if they don't agree, that they commit and they're going to have to, align themselves with the decision that's been made.
How can you effectively communicate the value of the groundwork that needs to be done to those executives who may be skeptical, who may say, we don't need to pay for this change management or this visioning session. We don't need to do this. This is dumb. What would you, what is your advice to those executives?
I think you're kicking the can down the road, right?
Right.
You're going to have to do it at some point. If you don't do it now, you'll have to do it later, and it's going to be more painful. And when we say the pre-work, it's the process definitions, the requirements definition, executive alignment, project management plans, plan for everything, because not everything is going to go well. So you need to have contingency plans. All of these things need to be done before you just jump in and say, let's upgrade, or let's go from on-premise to the cloud, and we've got this. You'll have to go back and do it again, and it'll be more painful, because what's going to happen is mid implementation, the vendor is going to say, well, this product doesn't do whatever you want it to do, and it's not in the requirements. Your requirements are not detailed enough. You didn't tell us this at the beginning. Now it's going to cost you a change order. Now it's going to cost you more money, more time, more political capital. um, and in the worst cases, people lose jobs, and this is not a fun thing to do. So once again, think of this as building a jail for the county, or a new police headquarters. These are critical things to do, before. So most executives or department heads, if they're in that position, they tend to be, you know risk averse, that you have to be conservative, right? So our approach is to talk about risks. Risk management is a huge part of being a top executive in any organization. So you have to think of it from those different standpoints.
And what are some of the consequences of not having executive alignment? Would you say failed implementation? What are your
Absolutely.
thoughts?
And yeah, fail implementations, bad contracts, because someone didn't care enough to give good inputs on the contracts or their requirements. um, uh, just it's a miserable time, because you're now having pockets of people that are not aligned with the direction of not just the project but the organization. And it's not just in our clientele, but even internally, when we do something new, we try to have executive alignment.
Yeah.
And if not, then you're not going to have buy-in from one or two people on the team, and therefore you're not going to have buy-in from their organization, no matter how loudly the CEO or the mayor or the city manager, executive director say that they need this done.
Communication is key too. I mean, you said it. The executive alignment in our team, stating your point, stating the value of your point, and then stating how it's going to make us a better organization. Like those are very simple things that one can do in their own departments to say, "Hey, this is where we're at. This is where we want to go, and this is how it's going to change our whole organization. This is how it's going to better increase the lives or better the lives of the citizens that we serve." Right.
Hmm.
So communication is a huge, huge piece
Yeah.
of this. Um, we do have some comments and questions in the chat. Mackenzie says, how do you approach customizing ERP solutions to meet the unique needs of different county departments?
So customizing is a tends to be a bad word. That means you're messing with the code to make it specific to you. Now, if you're talking about um, Configuration, that's a different story. Your settings need to be specific to your operations, yes, and the workflows need to be specific to your organization, yes. But customizing ERP solutions is not really advisable anymore. Because there was a question on yesterday's session. Someone asked, why don't people just build their own systems if it's this difficult? You don't build your own systems or customize them uh, immensely, because now you own this customization. Now you own this Frankenstein's monster that's only yours and no one else's, right? Which means that the vendor has to provide you specific specialized resources to maintain this monster that you have to pay for forever, because it's going to break and no one else will have this problem. You won't get any value from um, you know user communities that have the same software, because you'll have this unique problem because of this customization. Many reasons why not to go down that route, but configuration and making that unique to your organization, whole other story. Configuration versus customization, two different things. um, so think hard before you go down the path of customization.
AV, do you have an example of where maybe we were working with an organization and there were some butting heads, right? Uh, Cross functionally.
Mhm.
And then they came together to make a process better before implementing a software. Do you have any stories?
Well, several, and it's not uncommon, right? When you have a large organization, let's just say a school system, you have a CFO that's very conservative, as they should be. You have a chief HR officer, both part of the C-suite, that think of modernization and digital transformation and ERP implementations in completely different ways. One is, show me everything before you even start the project. Show me how this is going to do my workflows. Tell me, how, a consultant, how you're going to do this project to the extreme detail that we want as a CFO. On the other side, the chief HR officer is very forward thinking. Not that the CFO isn't, but more risk taking on the HR side. Um, and they think that there's should be one system that does everything for HR. Um, and then if it also does some finance things, that's fine. Finance thinks that everything should be in one solution and everyone needs to compromise on their needs so that they can be under one umbrella. So that's not uncommon to find at the outset, right? That's where we come in, and executive alignment sessions happen, and we do workflow fit gap analysis, BPR sessions, to help people understand that there's multiple ways of skin in this cat. You can have one system that does it all. You can have best of breed solutions that interface with each other and allow you to have best of both worlds. As far as your functions are concerned. So, um, not uncommon to have this, and I'm not at liberty of disclosing specific names or clients, but I'll tell you that this is everywhere, and it's not bad, right? You really need to think through these things, and I think good ideas and progress happens through good debate. So this is all part of the game.
How do we foster collaboration between departments? What do we do during those sessions? Or is there anything that stands out that we do specifically to help foster that collaboration?
Yeah, I think painting the big picture is important. How is
Hmm.
how is what we're doing, which is difficult, time consuming, often boring work to them, how is this going to impact the organization, their own positions, their departments, their performance, their efficiency, their free time? uh, Painting a big picture is really important, and then people can aspire to that, fill in the gaps, and connect the dots between the hard and smart work they're doing today, or as being asked to do today, with where this is leading. So people that are about to retire, for example, that say, why did you have to do this now? I've got 1 year to go. I was coasting, now I have to do an ERP implementation. It's a good time to tell them that this is part of your legacy, right? You're going to leave your organization in a much better state than you found it. or how it evolved. And then for the newbies that have just walked into this organization, uh, that are not used to green screens or older systems, what a great chance for them to create their own legacy and set the organization they're going to work for up for success with their hard work and sweat and tears at times. So again, comes down to people and how do you deal with people, and keeping that focus on people and the end result is critical.
Right. And we're not biased. We're very unbiased. So we're not in the organization every day, but we know how this works. We've seen
Yeah.
it. We've done it across the country. So we can provide that unique perspective to get everybody on the same page. So I do think it is very important to hire a third party consultant to help with just that piece. Like, hey,
Yeah.
let's get everybody in the room and let's have a debate, but here's your unbiased person who can bring
Yeah.
everything back together and back to fruition, right?
Yeah. It's almost
Um,
coaching and therapy at times, right?
yeah, it is.
Which which
It is.
which is what makes what I mean. It creates the conditions for success
Right.
long term, and it also creates a lot of dialogue that is just important. What most clients will find is when you go through an executive alignment session or a BPR session, a lot of times it gives you ideas that have nothing to do with the ERP project. It gives you insights into the organization, how people think, that you can then go apply to the rest of the organization and the rest of your function. Um, but without doing that, you're replicating what you have today into a new solution or system. Um, it just that's a band-aid solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about change management strategies. And again, we could talk about this all day, but how do you balance the need for change with maintaining operational efficiency?
And yeah, good question. How do you balance change and keeping the organization going most efficiently?
Right.
There's, I mean, there's a time of uh, you know can be a bumpy ride at times. It's not success is guaranteed if you do things right, but also the process itself is not. It's not easy. It's like, again, building a house or a school building or a jail. There's going to be bumps. How do you deal with those bumps is more important, right? One is you need to have contingency plans, not just in funding, but project management and critical path planning. uh, you know the PMI framework is great for learning about and following these procedures. Again, this is what a full-time project manager that's certified and experienced can bring to the table that you don't necessarily have the time or the expertise to do in-house. Is critical path planning, contingency planning. What happens if a variable changes? How do we go from path A to path B without changing the outcomes, or do we need to change the outcomes in terms of how much it's going to cost or what date we're going to hit for go live? All of these things are, it's a very scientific process um, that is often talked about. You go look up the PMI standards, and that's what we follow. And in the absence of that, you're sort of floundering in the dark because you don't know what risks you're looking at and what to do if a certain risk does occur. So, in larger projects, you need to have a project charter, you need to have a communications plan, a resourcing HR plan, time management plan. All of these things need to be in place before you start, before you undertake the project.
Yeah, a change management strategy, right, or a plan
Hmm.
needs to be drawn out, outlined
Yep.
for specific departments and what's expected within that plan. What are some key components of a change management strategy or plan?
Um, Communications is huge.
Yeah,
Communication and it needs to be two-way, right? People need to be able to ask questions, provide opinions, complain, and then there needs to be a mechanism to handle all of that, good or bad. And we've done, as part of our project management function, change management through newsletters, through video newsletters, through just taking people out for outings and giving everyone the opportunity to talk about the project.
yeah,
Because keep in mind, at any given time, someone's going to be upset on the project team about something, the decision that didn't go their way, some functionality they wanted they're not getting, something the vendor said, and how the vendor's implementation consultant is talking to them and their team. There's a variety of things that can happen, but you have to keep driving this forward. And again, treating people like people, um, making sure that this ship of ours is aligned in the same direction, and helping people understand that this is in the interest of the greater good. And then you have motivational techniques and theoretical models of change management like ADCAR and ProSci that can be applied to implementations, but nothing's more critical than communication.
And lastly, how do you address the fears and the resistance that often comes with major technological changes?
So another good question. Great questions in the chat. Fear of change is not necessarily related to technology, right? Any
Right.
change terrifies us because we it creates uncertainty, and you don't know what that's going to do. You're in your groove, you're living your life, doing your job, and now the executives are saying we need to change the system and we're going to process redesign. um, and you need to be forward thinking and adopt these things, because as smart intelligent people that work for high profile organizations and big jobs, what's wrong, right? That you're not efficient, and we fall in this trap too, right, Megan? We, as an organization, um, why do we need to move away from spreadsheets? The spreadsheet is good enough, like, but deep down that we need better systems, better data, better analytics, better reporting to be better as an organization. So I think giving people a sense of the big picture is critical. And fear of technology is really fear of change, and it's a natural human tendency. So shouldn't be ashamed of it. You should not hide from it. I think it needs to be tackled head on. And again, change management techniques and communication with the right team is extremely important. And once again, this is something that you can do in house, but it's not advisable because
Right.
you have day jobs, and this is a day job on top of that.
Why is it that we prioritize understanding processes and people over focusing on the technological aspects of digital transformation process?
Well, two things. One is because that's the service we offer is we're management consultants that are deep into technology and how it impacts management of an organization. Um, so from that standpoint, identifying the outcomes, creating the vision, talking to people about what they want is very important to our business because it's
Hmm.
important to our client's business. As a software vendor, your job is to sell your product and get out of there, which is fine. They're well-meaning people that also want your organization to transform and be more efficient, but that's secondary. They're hoping that your organization gets these benefits by using their system. So the two things need to meld. So if you haven't thought about how you want your organization to function and how efficient you want to be or how automated you want to be, then you can't match that with what the software provider is offering. So it's a disservice to everybody when you go into an implementation without having thought through how this product is going to work for you, and you rely solely on the implementation team from the software vendor to tell you how the product works, how they've done it at the neighboring county, and therefore you should do it too. Um, yes, they may have some consulting hours built into the project plan and the budget, but again, it's from the standpoint and through the glasses and through the lens of the software provider. It's not necessarily in your best interest, right? It can be, but it's skewed. Like you're getting some really biased advice.
Right. So as we wrap up today, if there are any more questions, I didn't see one. We might have missed one, but if we did, I will go back and personally respond to you. I see that Mackenzie has linked our newsletter. And how to subscribe to that. Again, our newsletters are super fun, very fun to read. They're not boring, but there's also some pretty great content mixed in there. So please go out and utilize the link and sign up for our newsletter. But AV, what are, in your opinion, what are the top three takeaways of what we talked about today?
Plan, have a vision, and treat this not as an IT project. This is a people organization project. This is one of the most important things you'll take on in your career in this organization or elsewhere. So to get started, the links in the chat are very important, useful. Go check them out. Also, if you're watching, download. I just put up a QR code that leads to our guide, and I'm going to share that. It's a very powerful document on how do you get started on a digital transformation on an ERP? And this is made specifically for executives. The executive quick start guide. It's not comprehensive treatise on ERP modernization, but it's got some really good information on what it is, how do you use it, and how do you go about implementing in a new ERP system. It will lead you to we have a checklist that also can be downloaded. So please reach out if you can't find those resources, uh, and reach out if you have any other questions. But Megan, thank you. This was a great conversation today.
I think this was great. Again, we could talk for hours on this. And one of the takeaways for me personally is don't trust everything you hear from your software provider. I love them. We have great friends who work for the big software vendors, and they're awesome, right? But if you're questioning something and you don't know who to contact me, contact AV, reach out, ask the questions you need to ask to get things done. But with that being said, AV is vacationing next week, so he will not be going live with me. But we have a pretty great topic prepared for you all. Miss Katie Knatzer, who is a very well established and esteemed senior manager for Avero, will be joining me next week, and we're going to put a little bit of our girl power into these conversations. So look forward to seeing you guys next week, and thank you for joining us. If there's anything that you guys would like to hear about specifically, please put it in the chat or message us privately. Thank you guys. Have a great Wednesday.
Thank you.